Time to focus in on Florida State's defense, taking a look at the depth chart, the way too early look at the depth chart for Florida State and its secondary. There's a lot of moving parts here, and we're going to break that down right here today on Warchant TV alongside Irish Rafael, managing editor of Warchant.com. My name is Tom Lang, and you can find the partner piece, the written piece that Irish Rafael put together for Warchant.com, available in the comments section below. We put the link there. Time to look at Florida State's secondary. A lot of new names, new starters, by definition, going to be in the fold for Florida State with Azareye'h Thomas, Fentrell Cypress, and others moving on to the next level or the next phase of their college career, Ira. And then also new leadership at the top. Patrick Surtain retains the title as defensive backs coach, but he's going to be focusing on the cornerback segment group because Evan Cooper arrives with new defensive coordinator Tony White, has some history with Tony White at Nebraska. He has history with Matt Rule with the Carolina Panthers. He's going to be looking at the safeties. So this is going to be a bit of an overhaul here from the defensive coordinator, position coach, and now obviously new personnel as well in 2025.
Yeah, Adam Fuller, when he was running the defense, his sort of position group was the safeties. He worked closely with the safeties. Patrick Surtain coached the secondary overall. But, you know, Patrick Surtain was known for being a great cornerback, and that was kind of his specialty. And Evan Cooper comes in, he'll handle the safeties. But I do think Patrick Surtain will be kind of the lead role of that secondary overall, although working hand in hand with Cooper, because Cooper, as you said, did work with Tony White before, has been a part of this defense and really is very familiar with it. So it'll be kind of a new age, I guess, or some new developments to watch from that standpoint. The other part of it that's going to be really interesting, even with the returning players, is there's some new terminology. They also play 5 defensive backs like Adam Fuller did, but unlike Adam Fuller's 4-2-5, they run a 3-3-5. And what's kind of interesting to me is, you know, the safeties, one of the safeties that they call safeties, at least with the way they did at Nebraska, Tony White could change it a little bit at Florida State, but at Nebraska, the 2 safeties, one of the safeties was traditional safety. The other one was more of kind of that nickel corner. And then they had a rover, which is kind of more like a strong safety. So the rover is kind of what we would have called a safety in the past. And one of the safeties is kind of what we would have called the nickel or nickel corner. But, again, 5 DBs. They have a lot of returning experience in that secondary, a lot of names that people are familiar with, guys who started, guys who were backups. And then also, you do bring in some fresh faces as well.
Yeah, the 2 cornerback positions. I mean, that's going to be an interesting battle. We get a lot of questions on the Tribal Council I've seen and in the chat during our live shows during the week on Warchant TV. Well, who are going to be the starters? I mean, AZ's now going to be, I think, is he participating in the Senior Bowl? If he's not, yeah. So, he's obviously moving on. Fentrell Cypress had been a 2-year starter for Florida State. Quindarius Jones had a lot of run last year, a lot of snaps. In fact, I was wondering if that was by merit, maybe by punishment. I don't know. But Quindarius was the first guy to come on the field to work opposite Azareye'h Thomas consistently in 2024. And they clearly were investing in his development for the long term. He's now already a junior. Time flies for 6'2", 190-pound Quindarius Jones. But Ira, that's just where the conversation begins at cornerback for Florida State. I would think he's a betting favorite to be one of the starters. But FSU has a ton of talented corners that could fill out that next position and or the slot position, which, again, could be called safety. But a lot of skill sets for Florida State to sort through here for us in spring camp to see who will control the second starter job and then the slot job.
Yeah, Quindarius is fascinating. In some way, it kind of mirrors Hakeem Williams at wide receiver from the standpoint of, Quindarius didn't come in with quite as much hype as Hakeem Williams, but in terms of a guy that showed real potential as a freshman, when you turn back the clock 2 years ago when Florida State was 13-0 and that 2023 season, Quindarius Jones was maybe one of the most impressive freshmen that came in that class. I mean, he would turn heads at practice, make big plays. He had the big play late in the year where he returned the block kick for a touchdown. Really long and athletic and impressive, made tons of plays in practice. Then this past season, he really got thrown into the fray, as you said. He became that number 3 corner and, really got a lot of playing time. Fentrell Cypress, I guess, was banged up late in the year, so Quindarius actually got a lot more playing time. And, it wasn't all great. And I think it's interesting to see, when a guy comes in as super talented as a freshman, very impressive, but no expectations. Now you've got to go out there and actually play and make plays and be counted on. And that's a little bit different. And I didn't think he played probably as well as he would have liked. But he was in in a really difficult situation because the season was already spiraling out of control and they weren't getting a lot out of the pass rush. So I'm not going to hold it against him, but he's a guy that I think this year is huge for him because he does have that ability. Now he's going to be a starter, penciled in, penned in, whatever you want it to be. They put in a lot of time and effort into Quindarius, so you think he'd be the starter at one corner. And I think the inside track of the other one is probably Jabril Rawls, who also got a good amount of playing time and probably was that next guy, kind of off the bench at corner last year. Got some really good playing time as well, and is another guy that makes a ton of plays in practice. When he came in as a freshman 2 years ago, now I thought he was a little too thin. I didn't know if he could really compete. Put on some size, got stronger, played a lot better last year in a limited role. Now we'll have to see if he can take on that expanded role, but they've got plenty of talented guys behind them too. So it should be really good competition.
I'm going to loop in the slot corner battle here, even though we're going to call it safety because that's the way it is on the depth chart as you've listed and the way that they might term it at Florida State. But just to talk about playing style, Jabril Rawls plays the game in the way I like. Ira, he's more of an aggressive player. So is Edwin Joseph.
Yeah.
And Edwin Joseph there were quite a few reps where Edwin Joseph stood out in games last season. Some situations where the veterans above him weren't passing off, weren't communicating, but he would be in the right position when he had a chance to take the field. Edwin Joseph is a redshirt sophomore at 6 feet, 190. He has that type of aggressive attitude that I think Tony White is trying to inspire here, whether he's at the dais early in his Florida State career or you're hearing from recruits or you're seeing maybe videos that are out there of the way he motivates players. He wants more physicality. So Rawls and Edwin Joseph fit that mold, but then right behind them are some names that Florida State fans have been salivating to see because of the recruiting rankings and Charles Lester and Jamari Howard and Kai Bates. I mean, so many names here to sort through, but again, this should be a great competition in spring camp because these are high caliber recruits that Florida State has spent time developing, and this is their moment now.
Yeah, and Florida State's taken a lot of heat for their high school recruiting the last few years, especially these last couple of years. People feel like they didn't capture the excitement of the program after going 10-3 and then 13-0. But you can't say that about defensive backs. I think Patrick Surtain's done a great job of bringing in some really talented DBs. A lot of the guys you mentioned, Ricky Knight's another one that was really impressive. But when you talk about Edwin Joseph, yeah, dude, football player. And people saw him last year flying down on special teams, huge hits, huge collisions on covering kicks and punts. Just a physical dude. He actually, of that group, was the one that really stood out a couple of years ago, probably more than anybody. But he just was kind of log jammed behind a bunch of experienced DBs and never really could get on the field. Last year, his emergence at that nickel corner is what allowed them to move Earl Little back to safety. Because remember, they were playing Earl Little out of position really for first half of the year because you had Kevin Noles. You really didn't – Greedy Vance had left. You really didn't have a lot of other options at that nickel corner. So they were playing Earl Little there. Once Edwin Joseph really emerged in that season, they moved Earl Little to safety, which was better for him. And Edwin Joseph got on the field some and made plays. Yeah, man, he is a force. Really excited about him. And then, as you mentioned, yeah, if you're Quindarius Jones or Jabril Rawls, like I have them on top of the depth chart right now. Maybe they take their first snaps when spring camp starts. But, dude, yeah, Charles Lester, Jamari Howard, Ricky Knight, all those guys are coming. They were impressive in practices. They all made plays last year in practices to show they were worthy. If I had one complaint about Florida State's coaching staff, one more complaint about Florida State's coaching staff last year, I would have liked to have seen more of those guys get to play special teams like Edwin Joseph. I would have liked to have seen Charles Lester and Kai Bates and some of those guys get more just playing time in college football. But there's no doubt the talent is there. And Jamari Howard's kind of kind of the wild card because they were super excited him when he came in last year, had a knee injury in workouts, but I think even before the spring, right? Or it might have been the beginning of spring practice. So we'll see if he's full go this spring or not, coming back from that injury. But if he could come back quickly, that's another guy in the mix.
Well, yes, you've got a lot of explosive athletes, here that
long and explosive.
Our sponsor for today's video is State Farm agent Russ Voorhis, a longtime Noles supporter of Warchant.com, supporter of Florida State athletics top to bottom. Russ is outstanding in the field of insurance. He covers you with his friends at State Farm, state of Florida, state of Georgia, state of Alabama. If you live in any of those three states, Russ Voorhis can cover you. If you like supporting Noles, who support what we do, that's exactly what Russ Voorhis is. Ira, he's as big of a Nole, literally and figuratively, as there is out there.
Yeah, and I think he's going to be in a better disposition this season. Last season was tough on Russ, like a lot of Florida State fans, and you could tell that. But yeah, I mean, we really recommend him highly. He's a good guy. Really cares about Florida State fans. If you do reach out to Russ Forhis insurance company and you reach out to their offices in person or over in Jacksonville or on the phone, if you're anywhere in the tri-state area, you can. If you mention you heard about him on Warchant, they appreciate that. They like knowing that they're helping fellow Noles. And I actually saw Russ post on social media the other day that they may be doing some hiring. So I think business is booming. I think things are going well over at Russ Forest Insurance. So people need to check them out.
For those of you that are listening on the pod version of this, I'll spell his name out. That's the website, russforhis.com, russvorhis.com, russforhis.com. Awesome guy. Awesome Nole. Yeah, it happened a couple of years ago. These are the names we're mentioning. When they arrived on campus, maybe the class before them, you just saw there was a larger caliber of player. It was like size it up by 1.25x, and here they are. Modern players, rangy players at the corner position. Quindarius leads the way there. He's a springy athlete, but he's not alone in that regard. Now to the safeties, we'll go with one safety position and Rover. Again, to be clear, if you're reading along with us here on the warchant.com piece with the link underneath. Shaheem Brown returns for another year. Ira, this is a player who's got something to prove. I've been on the record disappointed with inconsistencies and intensity from Shaheem Brown last season. There's no doubt he has the athleticism, and this is where you would hope under new leadership, the new set of eyes, a new safeties coach, his abilities can be harnessed. 6'2", 208 pounds, a lot of potential there. Other safeties to consider. KJ Kirkland got a lot of time last year. Conrad Hussey, I feel like got more time in his freshman season than he did last year, but he's a junior already. Ashland Barker, a transfer from a couple of seasons ago. He's shown signs of physicality. The aforementioned Earl Little Jr., he gets downhill. I don't know whether he plays within the responsibilities of the position all that great, but I do know that he wants to hit you, so that counts for something. And then Max Redman is a freshman that Florida State will be looking at safety as well.
Yeah, all eyes will probably be on Shaheem early this spring and really in preseason camp, and then when the games start, because he's a guy that, I remember talking to him after the Orange Bowl 2 years ago, the embarrassment, and the program was going in the wrong direction, and actually I think I was speaking to him before the Orange Bowl. It was the interviews before the Orange Bowl, and I asked him about coming back next season. Is he sure he's coming back next season? And he said, yeah, 100%. I want to lead us this new generation of Florida State football. And then, the year he had was certainly not up to his standards. He got suspended for a game. I thought early in the year, I think his frustrations about how poorly they were playing probably affected him, and I think the whole season spiraled. So that's why I don't want to take too many takeaways, especially guys that we've seen play at a higher level before. It's hard, man. Football's a hard sport, especially when your season's going in the tank, when you had high expectations. So I think if this new season will be good for him. It is his last season. This is his last chance. He's clearly a guy that thinks he can play in the NFL, wants to play in the NFL, but also wants to win games. And so I think we'll see a renewed spirit out of him, even in a down year. Very productive player. I mean, I think he probably had 70 tackles or something last season. So it's not like he went in the tank completely. It's just you'd like to see him make game-changing plays, not running dudes out of bounds 12 yards down the field or making tackles after the big play has already been made. A lot of other options at those other safety spots. I mean, I think some people think Earl Little, now that he's found a home, might be a contender to win the starting job. KJ Kirkland started a lot of games at safety last year as a redshirt freshman. Again, showed a couple flashes, didn't play great, young guy. A lot asked of him. Conrad Hussey, as you said, he could be a wild card. The reason and Ashland Barker, there's other guys involved there, but Conrad Hussey could be fun to watch from the standpoint of there's no talent, no question he has a talent. Highly recruited player. We saw that talent 2 years ago. They forced him on the field some as a freshman, as a true freshman, because they thought he was going to be a big part of the defense last year. I don't think he and Adam Fuller connected. And I think that was just that relationship was not as positive as it needs to be. Hopefully with Evan Cooper coming in as a new safeties coach, a new defensive coordinator, maybe that relationship's better and that brings out the best of Conrad Hussey. There was a point last season where I think a lot of us thought he might end up transferring.
Yep.
He stayed. We'll see what this new staff can do with him. But yeah, there's talent there, man. There's also question marks because a lot of these guys haven't done it at this level.
It feels like we're going to need at least 2 sets of eyes to cover this position group in spring. We're listing 5 different positions you've got here on the depth chart. 15 names, none of them are the same. A lot of times you'll see redundancy across different positions, and sure, that might be the case when they get to the 2 deep in fall camp, if and when they release that. But Ira, there's a lot of dudes to consider here, and we're not even getting into the freshmen that are coming on campus. A great story in Gregory Thomas, Zay Thomas. He's a 4-star member of the Seminole tribe of Florida who now plays at Florida State. Really cool story, but a player that's here because he can play. Shamar Arnaud out of the Atlanta area. Max Redman, also a freshman. There's just so many things to consider here. And then also you've got the moving parts of the new defensive scheme. So this really is, if you're a younger player on this roster, an opportunity to climb the depth chart and climb it fast.
And if they don't see what they like at safety this spring, there's a chance they could look for a safety in that late portal window at the end of the spring. And I think some people thought they might go get a safety. The first transfer portal window, they didn't do that. Don't really think that they kicked the tires on a whole lot of them. So I think they feel good about this group. But this spring will be big. Again, the door's wide open, new coaching staff, new scheme, a lot of new players, a lot of new opportunities. This will be a really big spring for that position.
Stay tuned for the early coverage of all of these players. Many of them are newcomers. They will be interviewing as Florida State Seminoles for the first time over the next month. You'll get to see those interviews right here on Warchant TV. Subscribe to the channel. It's absolutely free. And that way, when you open up the app on your phone or you go to YouTube on your computer, Warchant coverage will be right there on your home screen. And check out at warchant.com all of the articles. We have all of the way too early depth charts available right now on warchant.com. Again, a great way to remind yourself of just how many newcomers Florida State has and the opportunities that'll be there in 2025. Ira, really appreciate the time as always, man.
Thanks, Tom.
All right, we'll talk to you everybody next time right here on Warchant TV.